And here we are. Okay. That's the first thing. Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Confederation Building, the home of democracy in Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm very pleased to be here today and to be gathered on the ancestral lands of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq. And also, I recognize the ancestral lands of the Innu and the Inuit of Labrador. I'm pleased to be here with my federal colleagues, the Minister of Labour, Seamus O'Regan, the Minister of Rural Economic Development, Goody Hutchings, the MP for St. John's East, Joanne Thompson, and I bring regrets on behalf of MP Ken McDonald and MP Terence Rogers, who are very enthusiastic about the announcement today, but unfortunately could not join us. I'm also extremely pleased to be joined today by the Premier Furey and so many of his colleagues in the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, and in particular, I point out Minister Andrew Parsons, the Minister of Natural Resources, and of course, Mr. Brendan Paddock, who's the chair of the rate mitigation team, and all the key players and negotiators from both the federal and the provincial side of governments who helped us get to where we are today. In July of 28th, in St. John's, the Prime Minister Trudeau was here. He was joined by Premier Furey, by MP Seamus O'Regan, and our caucus. And he was here in St. John's to announce an agreement in principle with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador and the people of our province to financially restructure the Lower Churchill project. Along with Minister O'Regan and the Premier, he outlined the importance of ensuring that this project be on sound financial footing to secure the economic progress for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and for the people of Canada. As a government, we have committed to a clean future and to a strong economy that works for all Canadians. Today's announcement is a milestone in that process, one that has required a tremendous commitment by the federal government and one in which many people have had a hand in doing very hard work. I want to especially recognize today Minister Seamus O'Regan. Seamus is my friend, my colleague, but he's also been a driving force for our Newfoundland and Labrador caucus and our team in this agreement to ensure the successful conclusion for all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. He has been our chief advocate on this file inside the federal government, and today, Seamus, I want to thank you for all the work you've done. We all know that in order to achieve historic agreements and to have new paths forward and to have a new vision, it takes collective partnerships. It takes strong leadership. I'm very pleased to say that Premier Furey has been that strong partner and that strong leader in advocating for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. Premier, I am so happy to have you with us today. And publicly, I want to acknowledge and thank you, not only for your leadership on this file today, but for the leadership you've given to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians since you became our Premier, especially through COVID-19. I know that your commitment and your understanding of COVID and your leadership, not only as a Premier, but in the healthcare system, has helped keep so many of us across Newfoundland and Labrador safe, keep us healthy, keep us together as families and supporting each other. And today, sir, I recognize you and the tremendous work of your government and all healthcare professionals across Newfoundland and Labrador. So today we're here for an historic and milestone moment, and it's my pleasure to invite Premier Furey to come forward to speak.
Well, thank you, Yvonne, and thank you all for joining us here today. But before we get started, I think it's important that we take a moment and acknowledge that tomorrow, February the 15th, marks the 40th anniversary of the loss of the Ocean Ranger and all 84 lives on board. This tragedy gripped the province during the harsh winter of 1982, with the headline reporting the next day in what's proven to be incredibly powerful brevity, she's gone. To the families of those who were lost, and to every Newfoundlander and Labradorian who felt that loss with you, our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family again this week. I'd like to start this very special day today with acknowledging Ministers O'Regan and Hutchings for being here for this important moment. It's because of our relationships, our common vision, and solution-focused values that we are able to stand here today as a true team, an example to the rest of the Federation about as an example of what Confederation should be. An announcement like today's is more than just a ribbon cutting or the beginning of a new program. It's the culmination of months of sacrifices and efforts towards a common purpose, one that is good for Newfoundland and Labrador, a purpose that is good for Canada. Ministers O'Regan and Hutchings remain united in this purpose and vision, and together they represent some of our province's loudest voices in Ottawa, our biggest fans and our very best advocates. So thank you. I'd also like to give a heartfelt thank you to my friend Brendan Paddock, Serge DuPont, and the entire rate mitigation team for their hard work and drive in helping us get here today. And some of you are in the audience today, you know who you are. Thank you. Here today is something so important. I think we all know what it is, but what is it? It's bigger than the announcement. It's the next step forward for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. Today, with our federal partners, our signatures represent the agreement for our loan guarantee and funding restructuring for the Muskrat Falls projects. Now, you'll remember back in July, we came together and announced that we had an agreement in principle with Prime Minister Trudeau and our federal partners in Ottawa. Today, my friends, that agreement is more than just a principle. Today, it is a reality for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. We'll make it official and sign, more importantly, what it represents, and that is the next step for all of us, all of you at home, to emerge from out under the dark, long shadow of Muskrat Falls. While campaigning throughout the province and since I've been elected, and I'm sure everyone will tell you the same, Muskrat Falls and the looming worry of doubling power bills has been a top concern of almost every single citizen in our province. How can my bill go from $300 to over $500 a month? I can't afford it. I've heard it echoed in every town, bay, and community all over our beautiful province. I've seen that worry in the faces of both young and old, entrepreneurs, corporate citizens, everyday homeowners. It was a big worry then, and then the impact of COVID-19 has only amplified it since. My friends, as we slowly make our way out of the pandemic, many of us feel that we are not out from under the weight of it yet. The economy has taken over 2 years of punches, and inflation and uncertainty that followed has been brutal. Crippling power bills on top of that would simply be too much for anyone to bear. But if there's one thing as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that we know about the darker moments, is that there is always light, always that little beam of hope in the distance. Maybe faint at times, but is growing brighter every single day in our province. What we sign here today is a big step towards that hope. It's a big step forward for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. Today's signatures represent the agreement for the $1 billion federal loan guarantee and capital restructuring for Muskrat Falls in addition to the billion-dollar investment by Canada in our province's portion of the Labrador-Island Link. Combined with the annual commitment for NPI on Hibernia, this deal totals $5.2 billion. $5.2 billion to help with the burden and to lighten the load for all of Newfoundland and Labrador. This, of course, is a key part of our government's rate mitigation plan that will ensure electricity rates will not double as a result of Muskrat Falls. And as I said in July, this will be a collective sigh of relief heard in every corner of our province. This is the rate relief we've been talking about. And it now has teeth. It means that we can leverage the Canadian government's AAA credit rating to keep financing costs low. It means Newfoundland and Labrador maintains 100% ownership of the Muskrat Falls projects and its transmission assets, as well as control of the Labrador-Island Link. It means for everyday homeowners, your electricity rates will not double. Together, this will all generate more than electricity. It will generate long-term benefits beyond this agreement. It will generate more hope. This is one of the many steps we've taken in our economic recovery. My friends, the road ahead is long, and we face many obstacles on the way. But what we have signed here today represents momentum. Just take a moment and look around this room. Look at the people who've been involved in this deal. There are many hands pushing this forward and will continue to do so because we all believe in the Newfoundland and Labrador that we see, not the ones that others think they know. For a place renowned around the world for its friendliness, we are at heart a group of fighters. We've stepped up and always stepped forward. Even recently, when we look at how the people of this province responded to the pandemic, not with skepticism or denial, but again with a sense of a collective push forward, because we know that's how you push through. And that's exactly how we will all continue to pull together and push our economic recovery forward. Because as we sign these historic terms today, we all have our eye on tomorrow. The waves that will be created here today will ripple throughout the province. But as any good sailor knows, the horizon is what holds all fortunes, and that will always be our direction. Forward, always, towards new horizons. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. And it is indeed an historic day for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Minister Seamus O'Regan, the Minister of Labour for Canada, to come forward, and one of the key representatives for our caucus and the federal government on this file. Please welcome Seamus O'Regan.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, c'est un plaisir de vous voir comme toujours. He just said merci. It's great to be here with my colleagues, Goody, Yvonne, Joanne, as well as Brendan. Great to see you, Brendan. It is a joy to be back in person for this. I got rightly upstaged the last time around this summer. I had a great speech written until my boss decided that he wanted to come in and give the speech himself, so I couldn't argue with that. You know, we have been contending with crisis after crisis these past 2 years. But now, you know, almost 80% of Canadians are fully vaccinated, and we all know here at home with great pride that that number is 90 here. But I will say it's been unsettling watching the last 2 weeks unfold in Ottawa and right across the country. It has been stressful, and the people saying hateful things might be loud, but they are few. They are few. They are grossly outnumbered by you and me. They are outnumbered by Canadians who care about one another and who show up for one another, who get vaccinated, who socially distance, who wear masks. They do it to save lives, millions of them, millions of us. None of us asked for this pandemic. But 90% of us have found a way to pull together and navigate it without hurting people or shutting down a few city blocks. So we keep moving. Last summer, we welcomed Prime Minister Trudeau, and it's a bit funny, I always find, to welcome the Prime Minister of Canada to Newfoundland and Labrador, because for my generation, many of our parents were born as Newfoundlanders, not Canadians. They became Canadians, but they distinctly remember joining Canada. And I often think about that decision to join Confederation here in this building. To throw our lot in with the mainlanders, to bind our fates together, for better or for worse. Why did we do that? A dominion of proud fishermen and decorated soldiers, about as close to Ireland as we were to Ottawa, with American military bases dotted throughout the land. Why did we join Canada? It was not a decision without controversy. My Irish grandfather was a medical student in Dublin during the Anglo-Irish War. He made my dad wear a black armband to school at Holy Cross for a year. Black flags were hung from the windows of our family home at the corner of Patrick and Hamilton. So, this was not a decision that was without heated debate. It was not a decision that was made lightly. But it came down to a simple idea, and it was an article of faith. The belief that we are stronger together, and that we would be stronger as Canadians. And that faith rings true every day. We feel it with every needle in our arm. The belief in collective strength, of mutual support, each day as the vaccination rate in this province climbs higher and higher and higher. We see the truth in it with every dollar that flows into our coffers from the Hibernia oil field and the industry that grew proudly from it. We are stronger together. We are safer together. We are more secure together. Confederation is a partnership. Like all partnerships, business, communities, marriage, your partner matters. And Lord knows Canada's been lucky to have us. The Doyles, the Mercers, the Hawkos, the Blackwoods, the Pratts, the Powers, the Critches, the Cobbs, the Fortises, the Verifins. They all call this place home. Our world-class hospitality and breathtaking scenery attracts tourists from all over the world. Our artists and entertainers and journalists dominate the national airwaves and cultural scene. And our oil and gas workers helped build a patch out in Alberta and our offshore, Canada's offshore, right here, off our province. But it goes both ways. And believe me, the Government of Canada has been one heck of a partner. Under this Prime Minister's leadership, the federal government has supported this province with over $8 billion since we took office. $8 billion. $2.5 billion in new money. $2 billion over the next 10 years for the Atlantic Accord Review Agreement. $400 million for our offshore workers in 2020 alone, and $5.2 billion for Muskrat Falls. Today, I'm here to announce that the term sheets on this deal have been signed. A $1 billion federal loan guarantee for the Muskrat Falls and Labrador Transmission Assets, and a $1 billion Labrador-Island Link investment. This is a major development since the signing of our agreement in principle this past summer, a deal that will put the projects on a sound footing and protect Newfoundlanders and Labradorians from what we feared for so long, increases to the bill. Because for so many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, this is what it's all about. Rate mitigation. Can we pay our bills at the end of the month? Like the Premier said, it's all we've heard. This has haunted our province for over a decade, and today is a day many said would never come. It is here. This has been my top priority for my 6 years as a Member of Parliament. And today is the culmination of 6 years of diligent and quiet, but relentless and effective work. I want to thank Brendan. I want to thank our NRCan team, Natural Resources. I had the great blessing of becoming Natural Resources Minister at just the right time, with just the right department, with all the right officials. And to all of them, Serge, Jay, Molly, to all my team in my minister's office there who are now with Jonathan Wilkinson, who helped bring this home, I want to congratulate them. I want to congratulate a Premier who has been nothing but an able and professional partner in this. And I want to congratulate people at home who have consistently held our feet to the fire and told us how important this is to every single household in this province. You did this. You kept the pressure up. We listened. We worked. We got it done. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Seamus, and thank you so much for those remarks and for outlining the hard work that have went into getting to where we are today. I'd now like to invite my good friend and colleague, Goody Hutchings, and before I do, I just want to say I've tread a lot of water with this woman, most of it in waders, with a cast rod or a fly rod, but I can tell you she can tread water in more than a river. And she's proven it in spades in her time as a Member of Parliament and now as the Minister for Rural and Economic Development. So please help me welcome Minister Goody Hutchings.
Thank you, Yvonne, and I hope we can tread some more water soon. Seamus, it's wonderful to be here with you, my friend. This is our first joint get-together as ministers, and we're here in the capital city. Couldn't be better. And I know there's many more to come, my friends. And I also want to thank Premier Furey for hosting us today in our historic Confederation building. You know, folks, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, we're a people of the sea. We all know that. And every ship has a captain. And friends, I can tell you right now, there's no finer captain than we can have for our province right now than Andrew Furey. Thank you, Premier. Want to acknowledge my friend Joanne, Brendan Paddock, nice to see you, friend, and of course all the MHAs here in the room today. I want to touch on something that the Premier said, and that's affordability, and what that means for you at home. And not only at home, but what it means for the fish plant, what it means for the corner store, what it means for the small business. It means their rates aren't going up either. We all know the spin-off effect of that. And by working together, both governments of Canada and Newfoundland and Labrador are helping to promote our province's economic resiliency. Confederation was a great thing for Newfoundland and Labrador. Seamus touched on what we've brought here in 6 years. But there's another pot of money that we don't think about enough. It's the money that's gone into small craft harbors in rural Canada, in rural Newfoundland and Labrador. It's the funds we put in every single one of your communities through ACOA. It's all the money from our social programmings. That's many, many $1 million more. And it's because of this partnership with the federal and provincial governments we're going to continue to do so. So supporting this project, like Muskrat Falls and others like it, will not only contribute to Canada's plan to address climate change and affordability, but it's also going to have a positive impact and a lasting effect for every single Newfoundlander and Labradorian for decades to come. This financial restructuring is going to place Muskrat Falls on a strong financial footing finally. And the benefits here, folks, is that the province maintains 100% ownership and control, all of which will generate more benefits and long-term benefits for our province. It's good for the province, but it's also great for the people of Atlantic Canada. Because as we continue to develop throughout this beautiful province, we need to look at clean energy as we transition away from coal and build a healthy and clean future with an economy that works for everyone. This initiative will also position our province to fully decarbonize its electricity system, making us a leader among Atlantic provinces that still rely on fossil fuels generations for a significant extent. It also will make large contributions towards the Atlantic Loop, with exports over our maritime link. All in all, today's announcement is a historic moment that highlights both our government's investment for the future of all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Folks, we're all tired, as Minister O'Regan said, but we are getting through this together. So with that, I want to thank you again, Premier, for hosting us, Seamus, Yvonne, and our dear friend Joanne. It's always a pleasure, never a chore. And remember, folks, we don't rant and roar, we just get it done. I'd like to pass the floor back to Yvonne now. Thank you.
The most important part I failed to tell you is that I always catch the biggest fish. Oh. I just wanted to put that in there. Completely out of context, but wanted to get it in there. No. Actually, I'd like to now invite Brendan Paddock. We're so fortunate to live in a province of Newfoundland and Labrador where we have such strong leaders, not just in governance, but in business, in community. And Brendan Paddock has certainly been one of those strong leaders in Newfoundland and Labrador's past, in its future, and in its present. And I acknowledge and thank him for the work that he's done in leading this file in his role and with his team. And I'm so pleased, Brendan, that you could join us today. So a big welcome to you from all of us here at Confederation Building and in Newfoundland and Labrador. I invite you to speak and thank you for your hard work.
Well, thank you, MP Jones. I think we should compare fishing pictures with Goody and yourself because, in the true spirit of Newfoundlanders, we'll stay competitive on that one too. Let me start by thanking Premier Furey, Minister Cody, and Minister Parsons for entrusting me with this important mandate since August 2020. I'd also like to start by acknowledging my counterpart representing the Government of Canada, Serge Dupont, and his team from the Department of Finance, NRCan, Intergovernmental Affairs, and the Privy Council, many of whom Minister O'Regan called out individually. So thank you, Serge, for your professionalism, expertise, and commitment to the process. You're all likely familiar with the expression, there's no I in team. Well, this truly was the case on the rate mitigation file. I was fortunate to work with so many talented colleagues and advisors, including our legal team led by David Lever and Stephen Furlan at McCarthy Tetro, Greg Connors, Faye Shaw, and Jennifer Gray and the team at McInnes Cooper, the talented folks at Faskins Martineau, and Jonathan Dickman Wilkes, Anthony Z, and the team at JP Morgan. And I want to personally thank the members of the province's rate mitigation team, including Deputy Minister of Industry, Energy and Technology, John Cowan, Dave Jones and Auburn Warren from Nalcor, and offer a special thanks to Jim Meany of Nalcor, who successfully carried a heavy load through the whole rate mitigation process. The people of the province owe these individuals a debt of gratitude for their service on this file. And although there was a deep cast of supporting actors working in the background, supplementing the efforts of the rate mitigation team, I would like to acknowledge the contributions of a few who simply stood out. So thanks to Michelle Jewer at Treasury Board, Tracy Pennell at Justice, Patricia Hearn at Intergovernmental Affairs, and Jennifer Williams and Michael Latta at Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of my fellow board members at Nalcor Energy, Newfoundland Hydro, and the Lower Churchill Project subsidiaries, many of whom who have spent the last 5 years plus working with former CEO Stan Marshall and current CEO Jennifer Williams, and their management teams to restructure and realign the Lower Churchill project. The fruits of your collective efforts truly come to bear today. So thanks again, Premier Furey, for inviting me to be part of this milestone project. It was a true honor to serve the people of Newfoundland and Labrador and to help you and them get the muskrat off our backs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paddock. And I don't think we could have concluded it any better than you have. It certainly has been a tremendous pressure on the backs of many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and today is really for them. It's really allowing them to be able to breathe a little bit freely, to know that there is tremendous opportunity in the economic future of Newfoundland and Labrador, and they can certainly have confidence in knowing that they have strong leaders, people who have their back and their best interests in getting to where we need to go. And I can't help but acknowledge Siobhan Cody, the Minister of Finance for this province. I know your job has not been easy, but please know that we value and appreciate the work you do on behalf of all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. This is our home, and we love our home, and we know that you work hard every single day to make this come together for all of us. So thank you as well, Minister Cody. I'd now like to invite Premier Furey, Minister O'Regan, Minister Hutchings, and Minister Parsons, Andrew Parsons, to come forward to sign this historic agreement on behalf of the federal and provincial government.
Did you?
Just a couple of closing remarks.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask you and the Premier to come here to answer the questions.
Right? You call it Michelle?
Yeah, yeah. So thank you all for joining us today. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Yvonne Jones, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Labrador, the Parliamentary Secretary to Minister Jonathan Wilkins in Natural Resources, and the Parliamentary Secretary to Minister Dan Vandel in Northern Affairs. And I want to conclude today because we have had so many great moments in Newfoundland and Labrador where we have partnered as a province and as a federal government. And it is great projects like my colleague, Minister O'Regan, mentioned today, like the new Atlantic Accord Agreement, the Offshore Workers Agreement, the Muskrat Falls $5.2 billion loan guarantee project, kilometer after kilometer of investment we've partnered on to see the Trans-Labrador Highway being built through Labrador, but so many historic moments. And it is in those moments that we really realize the strength of our federation with Canada. In 6 weeks, we will once again celebrate that federation together as a province and within the country. So this is a good day for all of us. I'd like to thank Minister Wilkinson for the tremendous work he's done on this file and for supporting Minister O'Regan and our caucus in this, and also to acknowledge Serge Dupont, who's been extremely strong and a strong negotiator in terms of making this happen. I'd now like to call up Michelle, the Communications Director with the Ministry of Labour for Canada, to accept and navigate questions from the media. So thank you all for joining us, and Minister O'Regan and the Premier will be available now for questions.
Thank you. We'll now move to questions from media. We'll start with one question, one follow-up, working on the order used for the technical briefing. Please make your way to the mic at the back of the room and state who your question is for. We'll start with Mike Connors from NTV.
Premier, basically you're getting a third federal loan guarantee to pay for the first two, and then the third one will have to start being repaid in 2037. In what way is this not just kicking the can down the road? What's to say you won't need a fourth loan guarantee in a few years?
Well, you know, first of all, I wouldn't have got the first loan guarantee, but we are where we are. We don't have time machine. We have to deal with the realities of the contracts as they exist. What this will allow us to do is leverage the AAA rating of Canada to pay off loans that are due, frankly, in this decade, and allow us to pay them off at cheaper rates. We all recognize that they're some of the lowest interest rates ever in our history right now. So we're capitalizing on that while paying for it, as you suggested, like a mortgage, down the road. But this is something that will have to happen in order to prevent rates from shooting up to over 23 cents a kilowatt hour. Frankly, the impact of that is far exceeds the impact of what we've done today by a long shot, obviously.
When you made the first announcement back in July, the Innu Nation was very concerned. They've released a statement saying their concerns have not been addressed, and they still reserve the right to go back to court. What's to say that, you know, if they go back to court, this just won't all get scuttled?
Sure. We've had reasonable conversations with the Innu Nation over the last few weeks, recognizing that this was coming to a final decision point and a final event. So they knew this was coming, and I've talked to the Grand Chief myself. We've extended our process agreement that was signed, and we're in facilitation, but we've agreed not to talk any further about the discussion points between the government of Newfoundland and Labrador and the Innu Nation.
And I just have to ask, we're getting fewer questions than normal this press conference. Why are the media questions getting cut down?
Pardon me?
Why
That's
are
a
the media
federal
questions
question. This is a federal...
Why are the media questions getting cut down?
We'll make some time at the end for some additional questions. We'll move to Rennell from All in All next.
Yeah, Michael, I'll answer whatever you need after. I don't know, but I'm open for all questions. So there's no, holy God, it was you for 15 years, so I'm not going to be at that, okay?
Hi there. I guess my question is for the Premier. I'm just wondering when we can expect to see a final agreement signed.
We've just signed it.
Today's the term paper,
So what will happen now is this gives the ability of Hydro to go to market to secure the financing that will be, that will build on the FLG3. It'll also start to enact the second $1 billion for the overarching NewCo, using the instrument of pref shares, of course, to pay down. And we will have to, unfortunately, as a government, use almost $500 million a year to mitigate these rates. Let's not forget this. This doesn't come at no cost. This comes at significant cost to our coffers. But that agreement has been signed and we're moving forward. As I said in my opening remarks, last July was an agreement in principle. Today is when the ink is dry.
Okay. It was our understanding that today was just the term papers and that a final agreement would be coming in the coming months?
Well, this allows us to move forward. It allows Hydro to move forward with securing the finances. So, this is, the agreement is set. All the specifics surrounding it will take time, obviously, and sub-agreements to fully enact. But there's no turning back at this point. This is fully signed and delivered.
Brian Callahan, VOCM.
Thank you. Premier, we know that reliability of the LIL is still an issue. They're being given about 6 months past the May 31st date now to fix any critical punch list items that might still exist. I asked Jennifer Williams, the CEO of Hydro, last week, what happens if they can't, and she said, we'll cross that bridge when they get to it. What happens if GE can't, and at what point do you find someone else who can?
Yeah, I mean, as I've said from the beginning, I'm not a software developer. I can't speak to the specifics of the issues with GE, but my understanding from Ms. Williams is that this is moving in the right direction. It is coming to solution. I mean, granted, I'm like everybody else. We've heard that before, but she is confident right now in GE and will continue to work with them towards resolution.
And if you could speak to, it's still at $13.1 billion. At what point, we know that that's been the number for some time now, and a lot's happened, a lot of water under the bridge. Are you at a point now where you can update the cost on this project, sir?
As you suggested in your previous question, there's still some moving parts to this. It is coming towards the finish line, but it's not quite there yet. So it would be premature for me to definitively say that it's absolutely not a penny above 13.1.
And I'm sorry, it's not just to follow up on what you just said. We're not at the finish line yet, so some might say, why are we here today?
We're here today because we were anticipating to be at the finish line. The finish line is just around the corner, so we can't wait until we've crossed the finish line to mitigate rates. You had to do that. The prudent thing to do is to mitigate the rates for consumers and homeowners so that they know that once we flip the switch, their rates aren't going to double. So we couldn't wait until the whole project was done, turned on, fully baked, and electricity flowing to the consumer. We had to get out in front of it. I can't imagine the state of the province had we not taken this proactive approach and just let that happen and then tried to negotiate with the federal government on our knees. That wouldn't have been appropriate.
Thank you.
Peter Cowan, CBC.
A question for the Minister. Another significant project that a lot of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are wondering about is Bay du Nord, and especially the concerns we've heard that there's divisions within the federal cabinet with some of your colleagues wanting to not allow the project to go ahead. What do you say to many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who are worried that this critically important piece of economic development may in fact be kiboshed by your cabinet?
Yeah, look, leaks and rumors and leaks and rumors. I mean, that Radio Canada story came out with complete conjecture, unsubstantiated, and it's caused nothing but grief, to be honest with you, and more anxiety and instability, which frankly, one of the reasons, to get back to, the earlier question, why we're here today, it's because I couldn't open up a splash pad in Mount Pearl for the past 8 months without somebody saying to me, that's not real. When's it happening? When are you signing the term sheets? When is it real? It's real. This is $2 billion, right? So that's the big reason why we're here. Because I want to assure people at home that that's done. On Bay du Nord, look, there is a regulatory process that is in place. And I'll remind people, with some controversy in 2019, one of the big issues during that campaign was a bill called Bill C-69, which set up a process. It expanded environmental assessments, right? It incorporated Indigenous voices in a much more meaningful way. And as a result, we're starting to get projects built again in this province and in this country, right, like TMX. No matter what you think about TMX, it's being built, and a lot of people still don't believe that. So process matters. This right now it's regulatory. The environmental assessment in the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada is published. It's out there. The minister is considering it. He had to confront a deadline in Bay du Nord, just like only weeks after he became minister, and he had to deal with cops. So, you know, Minister Wilkinson and I have both said here publicly that, you know, we're going to cut him some, had to cut him some slack. He needed a little more time in order to consider it. That is part of the normal process. So what's happening so far is utterly and totally in keeping with the process. So everyone, I just invite you, please keep calm. We got enough these days to be anxious about.
And my next question is for the Premier. The opposition is raising concerns about the removal of Stephen Clark, the head of the Newfoundland and Labrador Centre for Health Information, especially the timing of it coming just a couple of months after what experts have called the biggest cyber attack in Canadian history. They're saying that you should be able to provide at least some details about whether there's any connection between these two. So can you provide some clarity around why this move was made?
Of course, and the opposition should know better. I can't comment on specific individual human resource issues as it pertains to the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm happy to have a discussion with the opposition leader on that, but it's not for me to comment in a public forum on one individual specifically.
All right, Ashley Fitzpatrick, Atlantic Business Magazine.
Hi, yeah, it's more of an intergovernmental affairs and process piece. I'm wondering why you opted to go ahead with this today as opposed to working with the Innu Nation to maybe bring that to a point of complete resolution and doing, say, a partner announcement.
Frankly, the uncertainty that exists in the markets right now, we felt a significant degree of urgency to proceed. We are proceeding with healthy discussions with the Innu Nation, and will continue to do so. But this today in no way harms the process agreement that we have in place with the Innu Nation, and we're proceeding. And again, as I said to one of the previous reporters, myself and the Grand Chief have agreed not to talk about what's specific in those discussions, but they are ongoing, and we even agreed to an extension to that process agreement.
I just wanted to follow up quickly on that. When you talk about the market, are you thinking about interest rates?
Yes, of course. I mean, you know, we're talking about billions of dollars in bonds. We want to make sure that we get the best rate, and the degree of uncertainty, whether it's in Europe or globally around, you know, in the markets around the world. I think it's important that we eliminate that level of uncertainty in the equation moving forward for ratepayers of the province.
All right,
but we can negotiate with it, and we're talking with the Innu Nation right now. Within the confines of that.
Thank you.
Sarah Smalley, Canadian Press.
Hi there. I'm wondering if you can provide any details about your call this morning with Prime Minister Trudeau and the other premiers.
Sure. It was a very robust call with healthy discussion. I think it would be wrong for me to comment on what others said on the call, but I did express my concern with the degree that these protesters have disrupted the lives of normal Canadians, law-abiding Canadians, have captured the spirit of Canada, and frankly, given us a black eye on a world stage. And I think it's unacceptable. I think that we need to be cognizant of our national reputation, whether it's attracting investments or just simply what people think of Canadians worldwide. And I think the time has come for the protesters to move beyond our nation's capital and restore some law and order for everybody else. The consequences of inaction are not nothing, as we're seeing across the country right now, that other protests are protesting the protesters. It's time that there is some action and that we have some resolution and some return of law and order across the country.
How concerned are you about the participation of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, or even the sympathies from Newfoundlanders and Labradorians with the protests happening?
Look, as I've said, everyone is empathetic and sympathetic to the anxieties that exist at this time in our history. We all feel it. I mean, hands up, who doesn't feel it? This is an anxious time in human history. That said, it doesn't give people the right to interrupt other people's rights. We appreciate that there are issues. We're working through them. Every province across the country has shown a relaxation, not because, I would argue, because of the protesters, but because the science and the epidemiology allows there to be relaxation of measures. But we equally know that Canadians, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are tired. We appreciate that. That said, we can't have the vast majority of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, their lives disrupted because of a loud few. It just simply can't be tolerated.
Juanita Mercer, the
Sarah,
Telegram.
I'm going to add to that, actually, because I think that's a really important topic, so I'm just going to interject. We had an emergency cabinet meeting last night. We had an emergency caucus meeting this morning. Following that, the Prime Minister met with First Ministers. Just to build on what the Premier said, we are all tired. Tired. Let us not forget that close to 3,000 people died since that occupation began in Ottawa. And let us not forget something that is all too evident today. January and February are awful. December's awful. And you know what was really bad? COVID, Omicron, and Christmas. That just knocked a lot of people out, right? Just when we thought we were getting through this, that was really tough. Emotionally tough, and tough on people's mental health. So some of this isn't surprising. So look, what I say to people who are tired and kind of look at this and say, well, I'm a bit empathetic. Listen, it is one thing to be tired, and it is one thing to be strung out and to have your nerves rubbed raw, and it is another thing to shut down city blocks and be a threat to the peace, order, and good government of this country. We don't get the peace and the good government without the order. And I think you're going to see more on that later.
All right. Juanita Mercer, the Telegram.
I believe it was Minister Cody who said that anyone born in the province today owes a debt as their birthright, and you just mentioned that this affects the government coffers. So, you know, this is now the third federal loan guarantee, essentially kicking the can down the road to give immediate rate relief. But what will this mean for younger people in the province in the coming years in terms of how affordable it might be to live here?
Well, it certainly stabilizes the electricity rates in the province and prevents any shock to the system, because there is an inflection point beyond which the prices go that people stop using electricity, and then that therefore compounds the problem, the so-called electricity elasticity curve. That said, we recognize that we didn't create this project. As I said during the election campaign, I didn't create Muskrat Falls, but I intend to fix it, and this is a fix. Is it the final fix? Maybe, maybe not. It will smooth out the electricity rates in the short, medium, and long term to make it more predictable, to alleviate the fears of electricity rates doubling. Again, to speak to the elasticity, that would be detrimental to the economy, the industrial economy, the households, the small business owners around the province. So in order to get to 2037, we have to get back past 2027. We have to get past today, and we can't let electricity rates double.
Some of the details that we were given prior to the announcement mention that specifics of the agreements are yet to be signed. Are any concessions related to the offshore a part of the final agreements yet to be made?
Very simple answer, absolutely not.
No. And conspiracy theories, you know, there's enough of those going around today, and quite frankly, some of them are causing real trouble in this country. So let me just quell any, sort of notion that any of these are tied. They are not. This deal stands on its own.
All right, we have a few more minutes if there are additional questions.
Sorry, Premier, I'd like just to go back to the whole 14.7 rate, just for as simple as possible for the public. You've repeatedly said the rates won't double. But we also know that year to year to year, after the 14.7, there could be 2 to 2.5 cents a year. That brings us up to 23 cents in 3 or 4 years. So how will that be mitigated over that time?
Well, certainly we're looking at, you're right. I mean, there's natural increase in everything. I think we're seeing it perhaps a bit accelerated today in the price of bread, fruit. Everything is subject to inflation and CPI, and electricity is no different. But you've never heard me say that it will stay at 14.7 forever. It will increase, but it just won't double. The issue is doubling overnight creates a significant strain on the economics of the electricity graph, if you will, to create this issue of elasticity, and then a death spiral out of control. Because if people stop using electricity, obviously, and turn to the wood-burning fireplaces and generators, there's less consumers, the price has to go up, and then it further complicates things. So this is about smoothing out this project over time so that there isn't rate shock, and that people are able to plan and enjoy lower competitive electricity rates. I will add this. We may be the first people in Atlantic Canada in particular to be going through this electricity issue. We won't be the last. As Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and others come off coal, there will be significant issues that they will have to deal with that we have been in front of and put to bed. They'll be dealing with theirs for the next decade or so.
And so just to be clear, you know, is there anything in the planning of this that in any way avoids regular guaranteed 2 or 2.5 cent a litre every year?
Well, I mean,
or liter,
a
2.5
liter,
cents. Gas on my brain, sorry.
No, but you're right in that the PUB sets the electricity rates. I don't set the electricity rates, and they'll be subject to the same regular applications by the PUB.
But is that something you're looking at in the review that's currently been announced for PUB?
It is, indeed. As you've heard the Attorney General and Minister Hogan say in the past, we're currently reviewing the PUB, and everything will be on the table.
Hydro is aiming for May 31st to get the full Muskrat Falls project commissioned. Does that in any way put pressure on getting the final details of this worked out by then?
Of course it does, but I mean this is good. I'm not sure where the myth of this is not final is originating, but it is.
It was the government's own briefing deck.
Yeah, but it's like this is done from a political perspective, from an intergovernmental perspective. Now it's the operational perspective. So the main agreement is done, the sub-agreements are to follow. But there is no going back, Michael. So I think that's what I took note with. Not that there's no going backwards in this equation.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering if I could maybe get your perspective from both sides on the idea of the ability to provide potentially further relief for ratepayers as these new rates come into effect this year. The expectation is this year. Because at this point, I mean, when you're looking at things like inflation, some of the issues that are going on now still with COVID, and people are generally maybe uncomfortable and suddenly they see this rate increase in their power bills, even if it is mitigated, it will be potentially quite difficult for some people to endure. So is there still room for the governments to provide an additional step in if it becomes that? Yeah, certainly we're looking at all options available to us, but right now we haven't gotten to a firm decision on that particular element. It was to get this behind us first and then to look at exactly where electricity rates would be. Of course, they don't have to go to 14.7 immediately. This is just a projection. So we'll see where we are at commissioning and move from there. Minister Regan, I don't know if you wanted to maybe comment on that affordability concept.
Pardon me?
The idea of affordability, I guess, for individuals.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think the very important point here is that we have given the province the ability and now I think the revenue to do with it what we know it needs to do, which is mitigate rates. The federal government isn't in the business to mitigate rates. To the Premier's point, I mean, this is something that gives them the ability and protects the autonomy of the province, because there was also all sorts of conspiracy theories about how we're going to buy this or take away that, or, there's none of that. There really isn't. And in fact, there is a certain elegance to this deal, I think. And the Premier brings up the rightful point that a lot of other jurisdictions in this country and around the world are going to have to deal with this. Moving to cleaner sources of power is not necessarily cheap. It's something that we all need to do, and in order to do it, and we've seen in other jurisdictions who maybe went at it a bit too early or didn't have the right mechanisms in place, like Ontario, you end up with a backlash, because people, unless you want to significantly mitigate those rates, people end up paying for them, right? There's something quite elegant about the fact that for the $3.2 billion envelope that's to come, that it comes from the net profit interest of our offshore, from the Hibernia platform. I think there is something quite elegant and good about that. That, this is something that is very much the province's, that they get 100% of the royalties from. But this net profit interest deal that Mr. Crosby signs very smartly back in the day, those proceeds now are directed to the province to do with what it wishes, which of course is rate mitigation.
Thank you.
I just had a question about the Hibernia money, because there was Hibernia money with the Atlantic Accord review, and there's Hibernia money with this. Like, how is that money not being spent twice, or is there enough in there to cover both of it?
Well, there's two instruments. There was the instrument, and you can explain the Atlantic Accord piece, but the NPI was kept out of the Atlantic Accord piece. It represents $3.2 billion. So that wasn't part of the Atlantic Accord. I heard that rumor when we announced it in July that this money, we were announcing money 2 and 3 times. That's not true. And if you look, Minister Freeland has committed this money. It was part of the fall fiscal forecast for the federal government. This money will start rolling to the provincial coffers in May or June of this year. It's new money.
All right, last question.
Is there any update on the software problems? And further to that, how might any possible delays in the project affect this agreement?
Sure. You know, I'd love nothing more, I think, than to get here and tell everybody a date certain for this project, but it's kind of like chasing COVID. It's a bit of a fool's errand to declare when it's going to be finally done. The GE continues to work through the software bugs. I'm not a technocrat. I can't answer specifics of why they haven't been able to work through the bugs. I've been assured by Ms. Williams that they are making good progress, and I take her at her word.
All right, that concludes our press conference.
Thank you all, and thank you for your patience earlier, too. We were delayed with votes back in the House of Commons, but appreciate your patience. Thank you.